Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Belgium once again, and we're going to go back to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before, and we're going to go back to probably my favourite range of beers that they do actually. So very much looking forward to this one, because this one is supposed to be pretty damn special actually. So I'm very curious, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So for this one we are going to go to Ertvelde, which is a bit to the north of Ghent in the northwestern part of the country, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Brouwerij Van Steenberge. So this is the 9th or so time that I've reviewed a beer from these guys here on the channel. This time we are going to go to the Gulden Draak range, and I think this is the 5th beer that I've reviewed from the Gulden Draaks, and this one is called Cuvee Prestige Laphroaig. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and apparently this one is a special aged version of the original Gulden Draak, and it's been in Laphroaig whisky barrels for 8 weeks. Laphroaig, of course, is a peaty whisky from Islay on the west coast of Scotland. So yeah, very curious to see how this beer turns out. We got this one here in Sweden as part of one of the Tillfälligt assortments, the temporary releases through Systembolaget, and I believe it was released sometime during September of 2020. I've been sitting on this one for a little while actually, so I can't quite remember, but this one was released along with a bourbon barrel aged version, but of course being Scottish, the Laphroaig one was the one that really kind of caught my eye actually. I do enjoy a good peaty whisky, so this is the one that really sat with me. I think I paid about 200 Swedish kroners for this bottle, if I remember rightly. It could have been 180. So this beer was somewhere between 18 and 20 euros, about 20 and 23, $24 for those of you in the States, and I guess, you know, maybe about 17, 18 pounds or something like that for those of you who are watching from back home in Scotland or the UK. So yeah, as I say, this one I think will be pretty special. I'm a big fan of the Gulden Draak beers. The other ones I've reviewed from these guys, of course, the first one was the original, the 9000 came after that, then it was the Imperial Stout, I want to say, and more recently I reviewed one of the Brewmaster special releases that we had up here. So yeah, 5th Gulden Draak review, and I think my 9th overall from Brouwerij Van Steenberge, after the Pirat beers and also one of the Augustine ones, if I remember rightly too. So yeah, nice to have these guys back on the channel, and I think this beer will be a little bit of a beast. So let's see how we get on with this one then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brouwerij Van Steenberge, and you will no doubt see one in the future, it's just a matter of when. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you, and that is being added to fairly regularly, but not as regularly as I would like. I do need to sort that out. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Van Steenberge then, on to my brewery notes. So the history of the Van Steenberge brewery goes back to the year 1784. So these guys have been around for quite a wee while, and as I've mentioned to you already, the brewery is located in Ertvelde, to the north of Ghent, in the northwestern part of the country, and it was founded by Jean-Baptiste de Bruyn under the name de Peer. But following his death, his wife Angelina Patronella Shelfo continued the brewery, and she in turn passed it on to her cousin Joseph Shelfo, who had assisted her for many years, and he was very familiar with how the brewing operation worked. His daughter Margriet married Paul Van Steenberge, who was a professor of microbiology in the Ghent Brewing School. So Paul Van Steenberge took charge of the brewery following the end of the First World War, and he changed the name of the brewery to Brewery Bio, or Brouwerij Bio, after the beer that they were producing around the same time. But he was very interested in politics, and he actually served as the mayor of Ertvelde and then as a senator in the Belgian parliament as well. But he was a real businessman. He launched several other beers during his tenure, such as the Bio's Flemish Bourgogne, which was an old brown beer, and also the Loiterbot, which was a lager. And he also made major investments in the brewery infrastructure, including a new brewing hall, new tanks, and he also initiated the switch from wooden barrels to sell the beer in to glass bottles. But in truth, Paul's instinct as a businessman always outweighed his passion for brewing, and he put the brewery into a cooperation as a means to cut costs. But all this, you know, having been in the family business all this time, Margriet she really saw this as a bit of a sellout actually, but her son Josef van Steenberge, he inherited the brewery from his father, but he had inherited the passion for brewing from his mother. So when his father died in 1962, Josef took over the management of the brewery and focused them on the production of high fermentation beers. Like his father before though, he was passionate about politics, and he only fully focused on the brewery at the age of 64, having served as a mayor and a senator, and that ended completely in 1978. But he got rid of the malt house and the hop plantations that had been planted by his grandfather, Josef Shelfo Sr., and he decided that instead that the brewery would purchase its raw materials with very, very strict specifications instead of producing them themselves. But in 1978, the company also acquired the recipe for the beer that the Augustine friars had been brewing in their Ghent monastery, and this was then fine-tuned and re-released in 1982. And he also completed the range of high fermentation beers at the brewery as well. But upon launching this range, there wasn't really a strong demand for high percentage beers at that time. However, since 2000, the market has really picked up, if you like, and there's been an increasing demand for speciality beers, and thanks to this, the brewery survived difficult times and has continued to grow since then. But in 1990, Josef's son Paul took over the company, and he modernised the brewery, building a fully new automated brewing hall, a computerised barrel filling installation, and he also added new water purification installations, new bottling lines, a steam plant, and a whole host of other things in there. But he was joined by his cousin Jeff Verselle, and he expanded the company's export market. He took a big involvement in the actual business side of the brewery, so he expanded the export market mainly to America, the Netherlands, Italy, and further afield. So the brewery's main brands of beer that they produce these days are Gulden Draak, which is this one of course, and the Augustine range, and they also produce Pirat as well, and you've seen me review a couple of beers from Pirat and one from Augustine, if I remember rightly. So I do need to see about reviewing a few more beers from that Augustine range actually. But to tell you a little bit about the Gulden Draak brand itself, the name Gulden Draak apparently comes from the gilded dragon statue on top of the belfry in Ghent, and it's said that this gilded dragon first featured on the prow of the ship of a Norwegian king called Sigrid Magnusson, who left on crusade in 1111. But he offered the statue to the Emperor of Constantinople, Istanbul, to put atop the Hagia Sophia. But a few hundred years later, the Flemish Count Baldwin IX brought the dragon statue to Bruges after the Beverhout battle in 1382, and then the dragon was taken by the Ghent inhabitants and placed atop the belfry in their city. So yeah, this dragon that these beers are named after has been around a little bit. First from Norway, then to Istanbul in Turkey, then back to Belgium, and then to Ghent these days. So that is pretty cool actually, quite an interesting story there. But it's basically a Viking dragon that this brewery is named after. And I have to say that in the Netherlands and Belgium, particularly in the Dutch language actually, I can read Dutch and listen to it a little bit and actually understand quite a bit of it, having learned Swedish over the past few years. So I find that quite interesting. There is a major tie between these Germanic languages in Western and North Europe actually, so yeah, it's quite interesting. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij Van Steenberge and the Gulden Draak range. I think it's a really interesting history, this one. The Belgian breweries usually have a very interesting history. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So as I told you at the start of the video, this one is a 10.5% Belgian strong ale. It is basically the classic Gulden Draak beer, aged for 8 weeks on Laphroaig barrels. Laphroaig, as I mentioned to you earlier, are an Islay distillery, which is on the south coast of the island, on the west coast. I think Islay, if I remember rightly, is the largest of the inner Hebrides, if I remember rightly. I think it is, come to think of it. But it could be. I could be telling you lies there, don't quote me on that, but it's definitely one of the bigger islands off the west coast of Scotland. But the Laphroaig distillery was founded back in 1815, and these days they're known for their very peaty whiskies, and the distillery, sorry, not the brewery, is named after the loch right next to it. But the distillery was run by the Johnson family for a long time, until the 1950s, when it was left to one of their managers, and then towards in the mid-1960s it passed around. From then on it passed around a few different kind of corporate entities, and these days it's owned by Beam Suntory, who are of course American, Japanese. So yeah, it's a shame about the Scottish distilleries actually. Not very many of them. I think there's only 1 or 2 are actually independent out of the bigger ones, but there's quite a few smaller ones starting up these days. So we are starting to get a little bit more of an almost craft whisky culture in Scotland once again. So yeah, long may that continue. But Laphroaig, I always enjoyed a peaty whisky, and Laphroaig were one of the easier ones to kind of get a hold of. They have got some really nice stuff in there. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'll just let you have a little look at the label of this one. This is really quite nice there. You can see Cuvee Prestige Laphroaig, 10.5% ABV. We can take that off though, because there is a little bit about this beer on the back. I'm not sure that will have been ripped off, but it says the exceptional Cuvee Prestige consists of 2 different versions. Recently of to the bourbon matured Cuvee Prestige, we let the Gulden Draak Classic mature in Laphroaig cask for 8 weeks. These barrels come from the famous Scottish whisky distillery on the island of Islay. This single malt whisky is characterised by a very pronounced peat taste, and it goes without saying that the smoky full character also comes back in the taste of this Cuvee Prestige, and this provides a strong, basically a lovely blend. Yeah, I couldn't get this off cleanly unfortunately, but that's just how it goes. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that I don't know why they would use something quite as sort of sticky as this. It looks like it's white tack or something, but yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the taste, and I'm very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, it is of course just a plain goldy thing on this. Will that come off? There it has. So yeah, we can maybe keep this, we'll see about that. So yeah, you can see actually on there you've got a nice wax seal. I think that is pretty cool actually, but I would advise them against, use one of these little plasticky resiny thingies rather than using blue tack, because that would have been quite nice to keep unfortunately, but now kind of pointless. But yeah, you can see it does have a nice top on it. This one, is this a 7, I think this is a 750, yeah, 750 millilitres. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. There we go. Yeah, just a normal kind of standard cork on this one, not a specialised one. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Ooh. I think this will be very, very nice. It's been ages since I had Gulden Draak actually. It's a beautiful, beautiful beer, but one that I don't know if you can order it through Systembolaget, but I don't see it that often over in Copenhagen either. Of course, I live in the south of Sweden, so I'm quite lucky. I can take the train over to Copenhagen and pick up some goodies. But yeah, this one I think is a little bit more difficult to. Let me see. Can I sit this on here? Maybe that will look nice for the review. There we are. But yeah. It's a little bit difficult to get a hold of some of these Belgian beers over in Copenhagen. Actually, we don't have all that many of them. But what can you do? So yeah, let's do a little bit of analysis of this beer then. So you can see it's poured a lovely. This is a very lovely, rich, kind of coppery type colour beer. This one. I'm not sure how well the colour is featuring on camera here. Let me just put the light on. That's probably going to make it a little bit better for you. But you can see. Didn't realise I didn't have that light on actually, but there you can see it's got a nice lovely kind of coppery colour to it. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, but I would say that the head is about 2/3 of a finger, and it's quite a cream, very lightly, quite a rich kind of creamy colour this one. It's almost got a little tiny bit of a beige tint to it, to be honest with you. But yeah, this one, it definitely looks like the original Gulden Draak beer that I remember. The 9000 of course is the one that's a little bit more like a Belgian strong dark ale. That's a little bit more like it's a little bit more like a quadruple, to be honest with you. So yeah, you do get quadruple fermentations and stuff, but then of course you do get the ones that are Trappist quadruples as well. So this one, I think you would have to consider this like a strong Belgian amber ale or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but the Belgian beers, they all tend to taste pretty damn good anyway. So yeah, the styles, there's a few kind of grey areas between the styles and stuff in my opinion, but Belgian beer really is fantastic. If you want a more yeasty forward beer, that's where you go. But yeah, definitely a lovely kind of rich mahogany colour, this one, almost like a very, very strong, same kind of colour that you'd expect from like an almost triple West Coast IPA. This one, lovely, rich, kind of copper, very kind of dark amber. But yeah, it certainly looks the part, this one. Lovely, kind of very slightly beige coloured head. I think this looks awesome. So, nothing overly surprising about the beer in terms of its appearance, but you know, if you know the original Gulden Draak, this one isn't too far removed from that. Apparently the casks they used from Laphroaig were originally used for, which whisky was it? It was Jim Beam Bourbon. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense, if you like, because that's... yeah, because that's that's who the owner of the Laphroaig distillery is. But it says there was only 9,162 bottles of this produced. So yeah, I think as a treat, yeah, 200 kroners for this. It is definitely worth it. Why not? But let's have a closer look at the aroma of this beer then, and just see how we get on. I'm very, very curious about this. Oh, that is lovely. That really is very nice. Yeah, Laphroaig all the way. Laphroaig all the way. So, where to start with this? Where to start with it? Straight away with this beer, you get that lovely, smooth, kind of oaky backbone to the beer. But it does come across as almost being just a little kind of touch spicy because of the peaty notes. You get that lovely, smooth, oaky character, but then again you get just that light kind of charred, peaty quality to the beer. As I've told you before, when it comes to beers, we usually have two types of kind of smoked malts. You've got the German Rauch malts, which are distinctly more meaty. Those usually come from Bamberg, of course, Schlenker, La Spezial, these kind of breweries. But when it comes to Scottish malts, the peated malts are distinctly more kind of, it's almost like a more grassy, kind of slightly more earthy smoky character that you get off them. The peaty notes are very grassy and earthy in my sort of mind. So I really like both. I do like the German meaty smoked malts, and I like the grassy kind of earthy ones that you get in the peated malts from Scotland. And you smell that straight away with this beer. Yeah, I mean, the woody, it's got a whole, the backbone of this beer is just beautiful. I mean, I'm a sucker for smoked beers. You guys will know this if you've watched the channel, and the smoky backbone, the smoky woody backbone that this beer has is just, it's just incredible. I love it, absolutely love it. So I'm glad I bought this one, I really am. It was a bit more expensive, but you know, sometimes you just have to say, why no? So yeah, beautiful backbone to this beer. Like I say, that smooth oaky note that's in there is lovely. You've got a real, it almost has a little bit of a kind of woody spice to it, but that's the kind of charred peaty notes in there, and you also get that earthy grassy sort of mix out of it, which is very, very nice. And that's before we've even really talked about the more kind of yeasty, Belgian-y elements of the beer actually. The Scottish side of this beer really is kind of showing its head and showing itself very, very well. But yeah, on top of that though, and it's more in the centre of the nose. I think that, as I say, that the woody notes are really, and the peaty notes are really forming the backbone of the beer, and you can really find those. Those are quite prominent on what feels like the edge of the nose, but in the middle of the nose, that's where you get the more kind of doughy, bready, yeasty sort of character that you expect of a Belgian beer. These things, of course, are very, very yeast forward. But yeah, you get a nice kind of brown, bready kind of base to this one, that lovely doughy, bready, yeasty sort of thing in there. For me, there's quite a bit of brown sugar in this one as well. You do get a little bit of a slight clovey note to it on the bready side of things, which is quite interesting. That's not uncommon for these Belgian beers. But yeah, nice brown bready, sweet bread crusty sort of thing. A little bit of a clovey spice mixing in with it as well. And then you've got a little bit of brown sugar in there as well. To me, the brown sugar's actually come across as being quite sweet and caramelly. It's got a little bit of that kind of almost, it does have a wee bit of an almost honey, kind of honey wafer type quality to it as well. So you've got a wee bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this beer. So yeah, I really, really like how the malty and barrel aging side of this beer goes together. The more that you sit and smell this one, you do get more of a kind of lighter note out of this one. You do start to get a few little undertones of kind of vanilla and stuff coming out of it, maybe a little bit of a leatheriness as well, I think. But yeah, the peaty, the grassy and peaty elements of the Laphroaig smoked malts in this are just beautiful. Islay whiskey, of course, is really well known for its kind of peaty, smoky character actually. Some really, really beautiful whiskies on Islay, so yeah, do go and check those out if you get the chance. yeah, one of my best friends from high school was originally, his family were from Islay, so yeah, we used to get to try quite a few Islay whiskies when I was younger. It was quite nice. But yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, is really nice. It's got a real depth to it. I really like that. It just ticks all the boxes for me. It's what I personally like from smoke beers. This one, so yeah, you don't come across too many smoky Belgian type beers, and so this one I think is a really kind of unknown, very quirky entity in my mind. But yeah, we've talked enough, I think, about the kind of malty barrel aging backbone of this one. You do almost get a teeny little bit of vanilla out of it at the very front of the nose as well, but again, that's quite minimal. But the aroma of this beer is beautiful. Take a bit of time to enjoy that. So, yeah, hoppy side of things then. You do get a fair little bit of hoppy quality out of this one, and you know, when it's only barrel aged for about 8 weeks, I'd be curious to know why they chose 8 weeks. Maybe just so that the infusion didn't become too strong, if you like. Maybe so it didn't get too smoky almost. That's probably the main reason. But yeah, in this one you do get a little bit of a smooth earthiness out of the beer. You get a few herbal notes as well, and you do get a nice little bit of floral quality and some lighter grassiness in there as well. I would be curious to know what hops they've used in this. I know that in Belgium sometimes they like to use Styrian Goldings and things from Slovenia. They do like the Slovenian hops, a more kind of noble variety. Czech Sats, of course, and right next door you've got the Hallertau and then the Tettnangers from Germany. So it's these kind of noble hops that they tend to use in Belgian beers, from what I understand. But they do grow quite a lot of their own hops as well, and the Belgian hops tend to have more of they've got a little bit more of the English herbal quality, but they've got the kind of lighter, grassier aspects that you would expect to the German noble hops too. So I don't know exactly what they're using in this one, but it does come across. It does have a nice little bit of herbal character, a little bit of earthiness, as I say, some floral notes too, and then a little bit of a lighter grassiness, and I think that describes the green side of the hops in this beer really quite nicely. Fruity side of things then, this is the last thing we need to cover for the aroma. So yeah, for me, this one is quite interesting because you do get a little bit of red fruity character out of this one, but you also get some of these dried fruity notes out of the beer as well. So yeah, for me, there is a tiny little bit of that raisiny note and a little bit of an almost figgy quality to this beer, but there's a lot of that kind of dried raisiny note, like that white green grapey sort of thing. I do get almost a little bit of an apricot-y jammy kind of thing out of this one as well. So it's really interesting. There's a really interesting blend of fruits coming out of this. Bit of a kind of definitely a little bit of a kind of juicy sort of plum note, some figgy qualities in there on the red side of things, but then, as I say, a bit of an apricot-y and kind of sultana type quality coming out of this beer as well. Maybe a few perry esters as well, come to think of it. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is very interesting, and that offers a big contrast to the kind of barrel aged side of this beer too. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. I think this should be a very, very interesting beer. So yeah, let's have a taste of this then. So this one is the Gulden Draak Cuvee Prestige Laphroaig, coming in at 10.5% ABV, a version of the original Gulden Draak beer, aged in Laphroaig whisky barrels from Scotland, from the Isle of Islay in Scotland for 8 weeks. This beer comes to you from Brouwerij Van Steenberge in Ertvelde, to the north of Ghent in the northwest of Belgium. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, proost, santé. Cheers. Oh yeah, that's really very, very nice, I have to say. The one thing I will say to you about this is that you really need to appreciate smoke. I mean, there are people who just do not like smoking peaty sort of things at all, but if you like that sort of thing, you are really going to enjoy this one. This is a lovely, lovely beer. I will say the smoke and the kind of peaty notes out of this beer are a good bit more prominent than the aroma is going to have you believe, and they do start to kind of take over the palate a little bit, so just be aware of that with this one. If you're not so much into that, probably go for the bourbon barrel aged version. But yeah, for me, this is lovely. I really, really like that. It's an awesome, awesome beer. I'm going to say straight away, thumbs up to Brouwerij Van Steenberge for this one, and the guys that are doing the Gulden Draak stuff. This is beautiful. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a good beer, but yeah, it's very, very satisfying, this one. The first impression of it is it's got a lovely smoothness to it, but at the same time it does develop a bit of dryness the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. And you know, it's not so different. If you take a bit of time and smell the aroma, which I always recommend you do, it's not that different from the aroma, but just certain things, the peaty side of things is a little bit more prominent in this one, I would say. But you have to be aware the beer will open up a little bit as you drink more and more of it. That's one of the reasons why I like my reviews to be a little bit longer. I think beer takes a bit of time to open up on the palate. A little bit like whiskey, to be honest with you. So yeah, for me then, straight away with this beer you get that oaky backbone that just blankets the middle of your tongue, and it does come across as a little touch charred actually. The woodiness in the middle third of your tongue and the back third of your tongue it does have a little bit of charriness to it, but at the same time it does have a wee bit of smoothness, particularly as you move towards the front of that middle third of your tongue, and some of the woodiness, it does creep forward into that front third of your tongue as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you will notice a trend over your tongue that this, towards the back of the palate, it's a bit more kind of spicy and charry and toasty, and then as you move gradually further forward, it gets more and more, it really does get more and more sort of, how would we say, it definitely gets a little bit more kind of vanilla and sort of sweeter, if you like. So I really like how that side of this beer goes together. It's very, very nice in that sense. So yeah, lovely, lovely tasting beer, this one. Yeah, it's the woody side of this beer that really forms the backbone of the beer, and it's not madly complex, but the flavour that you get out of it is just beautiful. So yeah, what you'll notice with this beer is it does develop an almost little bit of a kind of spicy sort of thing. I've had a few kind of Japanese sakes and stuff that are cedar barrelled, and it's almost like that, or a kind of cherry wood sort of thing. These woods have just a little touch of spice to them, and this, the way that the smoky characters and the peaty characters come out in this one, it really does just give that impression. So yeah, you get that nice smooth oaky note to it. And we're talking about the kind of back half of the tongue, if you like, here, I would say. So you get that nice kind of smooth oaky note underneath, you get that sort of spicy, charry, pardon me, kind of note on top of it. Then you start to get the more earthy and grassy, peaty, smoky notes there as well. The woody character in this beer feels as if it's very, very layered. But what you're going to notice, as I say, if you move further forward on this one, the charriness just kind of, the charriness and the sort of dryness to the wood just gradually kind of fades away. It just goes down a little bit. Then as you reach the kind of front half of your tongue, that early part of the front half of your tongue, that's when you start to get a wee tiny touch of a smoother vanilla type quality out of this one. And you know, you still get a little bit of that kind of almost, that sort of, I hesitate to say cedar, it's not the same flavour, that cedar cherry wood sort of thing. You do get just a little bit of that woody spice kind of pushing forward into the kind of front half of your tongue there as well. But that's the backbone of the beer. We've not even talked about the kind of Belgian yeasts and things that are going on in this one as well, but the backbone of this beer is really, really nice, and you will see how it develops and just dries out the further that you go into the aftertaste with the beer. But it really is top class, so thumbs up to Gulden Draak and Brouwerij Van Steenberge for this one. It's lovely. So yeah, if you go to the very centre of your palate, then on top of that you get that lovely big kind of thick Belgian yeasty quality coming out of this beer. And it is like a very kind of brown bready quality, but the sort of charriness, when you have the liquid on your tongue initially, I think the peat has a little bit more of a prominence in the middle of the palate there, and it's almost as if the kind of bread crusty quality in this beer, it's almost as if it just is infused with the kind of smoky characters, which I really, really like. Sorry about that, guys, memory card problems again. But yeah, as I was saying, in the middle of your palate, you really get that big doughy yeasty character starts to come out of the beer. And for me, it really feels that you've got that lovely smooth kind of brown bready but still quite yeasty and almost clovey type thing in the middle of the palate there, but you can feel it's almost like a smoky, crusty kind of bread that comes out of this one, and I really like that about that. So that just, in the middle third of your palate, that just forms a nice kind of smooth layer sitting on top of that slightly drier, more kind of spicy, woody note in there. So I really like that about this beer. On top of that kind of bready layer that I was talking about, you do get a nice little bit of that kind of brown sugary character to this one. It's interesting this, because again the smoky peaty characters are really playing an interesting role in this, because the brown sugar in some ways it almost comes across as a little bit more toasty, and it's so unusual, but it really works very well for the beer. So yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you do get a straight up sweet caramel, if you like, on the very kind of top layer of this thing. But as you move further out from that, it does have a wee bit more of a kind of biscuity, I hesitate to say McVitie's digestive biscuit in this one, but it does have a wee bit more of a kind of lighter, honey, biscuity sort of thing. But you can really feel the smoky, peaty character really infuses into that brown sugar as well. But in the very centre of your palate, you do have a nice, rich kind of brown sugary note to this beer as well, and you can feel that as you go out towards the sides of the palate there, the whole kind of thing just dries off a little bit. But yeah, you can feel with that big doughy yeasty sort of thing, it does spread back towards the kind of back third of your palate, if you like, and on the back third of your palate you can feel there's just a little bit of a slightly thicker breadiness there and a little touch more graininess to the beer. But as I've found quite often with beers recently, I think it does kind of smoothen out a little bit more as you come further forward. It drops a little bit as you go into the middle third of your palate, then on top of that you start to get the kind of doughy, yeasty kind of things again, and then you start to get those layers of brown sugar coming out of the beer. But yeah, it feels everything has this kind of peaty, grassy smokiness just infused out through it. And you know, it is, some people might say it's quite a dominant flavour, if you like, but to me, it is. I can see why some people would say that, but to me, this is definitely not the strongest of smoky things that I've come across. It's really, to me, just adding more of a depth. But you know, this, my point of reference is as someone who is used to smoky character both in beer and in whiskey. So for someone who tries this straight off the bat without having that experience, I could see that some people might think this is, you know, it's a bit overload in the smoky department. But I think that the smoke in this really adds a bit more of a depth. So as I said earlier, if you're not used to the smoky side of things, go for the bourbon barrel aged one. And if you are used to the smoky side of things, you will really appreciate this one. This is a beautiful, beautiful beer. You will notice with this beer, I think there's one or two slightly nutty notes, just very slight nutty notes come out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. There's one or two very slight tobacco-y, sort of leathery notes as well. You've got a few just of these kind of undertones coming out of this one as well. It's really interesting how this beer develops the further that you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, I really like how everything kind of goes together in this one. This is one of these beers where the complexities just fit together really, really quite well, actually. So yeah, big thumbs up from me in this one. Lovely brown sugary notes, lovely yeasty characters, and then the way that the level of complexity that you get out of the wood in this one is quite nice. And I do think you will notice into the aftertaste as well, you can still taste a little touch of the more brown sugary bourbony notes out of the wood in this one as well. I think that is a flavour that develops in this one. I've always found that the American bourbons are just a little bit more kind of sweet and brown sugary than the Scotch whiskies are. The Scotch whiskies are just a little bit more kind of grainy and toasty, if you like. So yeah, this is a really interesting beer. And that's us just covered the woody backbone and the kind of yeasty side of things. Let's look at the hoppy and fruity side of the beer then. So again, these two parts of the beer are quite similar to what you pick up in the aroma. Back corners of the palate, there is a wee bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward, the earthiness does come forward a little bit, then it evolves to be more herbal, and as you reach the front corners of the tongue, it's definitely a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. I'd be curious, as I say, to know what hops they've used in this, be it English, German or Belgian. I wouldn't really know, it's quite difficult to pick out, like I say. But then around the very front curve of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of a lighter kind of grassy note to the beer, but there is a wee bit of that herbal quality kind of creeps in there as well. But as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And remember that in Belgian beer, the yeast is going to contribute some of those fruity characters as well. So on that borderline between middle third and front third of your tongue, there is a little bit of an almost cakey, Christmassy, puddingy type flavour to this one. You do get a little bit of that in here, like a charred cake edge, but as you move further forward you get these other things. So there's a nice juicy, there is a nice little bit of a kind of plummy note to the beer, but that's quite minimal. Very quickly, I think, as you move further forward on the fruity part of the palate, the beer gets a little bit more figgy, and then you start to get, you start to get a little bit of the perry ester out of it. You start to get some of these nice kind of that dried sort of apricot-y and sultana-like flavour as well. And as you reach the very kind of front tip of your tongue, there is just a wee touch of a more oily blackcurranty, blackberry flavour out of this one. But to me, this beer, it really leans more towards the dried apricots, the kind of sultanas, the pears. It's these esters that really push the way out for me. The red fruity esters are kind of sitting more in the background for me rather than those other ones that I've mentioned just there. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is really nice in this one. So yeah. But this is definitely one of these beers where it just fits together really well. The other thing that I would say about the fruity side of this beer, when you take it in, I think it's distinctly more red and fruity, but then as you go further into the aftertaste, that's when the more dried fruit, apricot-y, peary sort of things develop out of the flavour of this one. But I do think the beer, as I say, the wood gets a little bit more spicy and dry and peaty the further you go into the aftertaste as well. So this is a really, really interesting beer. So yeah, it gets a massive thumbs up for me, this one. This isn't really like anything else I've tried, but it's just a beautifully, beautifully done beer. So yeah, well done to Laphroaig on this one. They've pulled off something really, really very nice here. So yeah, mouthfeel wise then, this one again is very nice. I would say bottom end of full bodied for this one. The carbonation is quite smooth in this, but it does have a wee bit of a kind of ting to it, a wee bit of a tingly sensation to it, if you like. But yeah, it comes across as a really quite slick beer. There's a nice oiliness to it, but it does get drier and drier, as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste. And that suits the barrel aging component of this beer. As I say, it's just lovely. In terms of IBUs, I wouldn't know what to say about this one, because it does, as I say, it has a bit of dryness and a bit of spiciness. I'm not sure whether you can count that sort of peaty character in the context of IBUs. I really don't know. So, I mean, I would guess that this one, I think in terms of overall bitterness, it's not too high, but it might be around a kind of 30 or 40-ish IBU. If you consider the dryness as IBUs, it does have a wee bit of that dryness to it, and there is a wee bit of bitterness, as I say, from that smoky note, but to what extent that goes, it's quite difficult to say. The middle of your palate, like I say, the woody notes are very smooth in some ways, but they do get a little bit drier and develop. You've got a nice kind of thicker, doughy, bready, yeasty sort of thing, some brown sugary sweetness, a little bit of a toasty character in there as well. So the malty, yeasty side of this beer is really complex. It does get drier, like I say, the further you go into the aftertaste, and for me the fruits are a mixture of juicy and oily. Actually, this has a really, really interesting profile to it, this beer, and it's not like any other one that I can think of having reviewed on the channel before. So yeah, as I say, massive thumbs up from me, this one. There's nothing that I can think to compare this beer to. So yeah, have a go at this one for yourself and just see what you think. As I said, the smoky characters in this one, if you're not used to this sort of thing, maybe you'll find this beer a little bit of a smoky overload, but I really like it as someone who is into these kind of smoky flavours. If you're not into them, go for the bourbon barrel aged version instead, but I think this one's awesome. I'll need to see if I can still get a hold of the bourbon one, because that might be interesting to try as a comparison, but I think probably I've got a feeling that I like this one so much, I might be a little bit kind of almost disappointed with that one after that, even though it will obviously be very, very good beer. But this one just suits my tastes. And remember, as we always say, beer is subjective. Different people like different things. But for me, this one is awesome, and definitely interesting to see a Laphroaig aged Belgian strong ale. I think this one really turned out very, very nicely. So thumbs up to Brouwerij Van Steenberge and to the guys at in the Gulden Draak range as well. I think this is an awesome beer. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. There's not much more we can say on this beautiful beer. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij Van Steenberge and the Gulden Draak range as well. This one was really nice to review. I'll need to see about reviewing the bourbon one for you at some point. I maybe need to get that and just leave it for a while before I review it, so that I kind of forget exactly what this one was like. But this is a beautiful beer, probably the best, my favourite one, probably the best one I think I've reviewed from Gulden Draak and Brouwerij Van Steenberge already. So check this one out if you're into your smoky things. If you're not, then I would recommend you go for the bourbon barrel aged one. But to me, beautiful example of a nice Islay barrel aged beer. Actually, this is a very, very quirky one, so I think you guys will enjoy it. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Gulden Draak and Brouwerij Van Steenberge. We will review more from them in the fairly near future, but in the meantime, this one was the Gulden Draak Cuvee Prestige Laphroaig, a special version of the original Gulden Draak beer, coming in at 10.5% ABV, aged in Laphroaig whisky barrels from Islay in Scotland for 8 weeks, and it turned out to be absolutely beautiful. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Gulden Draak and Brouwerij Van Steenberge, check out the Laphroaig distillery as well, and have some nice whiskies, and I will catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, Prost, à santé. Check out this beer, it was really damn good. Cheers.